Oh, okay, that worked. All right. So first thing, now I didn't know what range of people we had here, so I may zoom through this a little bit, but this is sort of like the background to what we're doing. So looking at why do research, looking at the relationship between research and referencing, looking at referencing being ultimately an issue of trust and building trust with your audience, asking whether or not we want to manage or not to manage in sort of Shakespearean way. That's the question. We'll do a little introduction to citation management, Zotero. You guys all use it, so that's going to be very easy for us to go through. But I will just sort of go through it a little bit on my end and show you the way that I organize it and show you kind of like the genesis of the misorganization of it as well. And then also how citation management can ultimately make your life easier and conversely more difficult. So let's get started. As I said, it's not going to be a very in-depth one into a lot of the tips and tricks. However, if it's just the three of us, we may fast forward to some of those things so that you at least get something out of it. All right. So why do we do research? So research, and I'm speaking about referencing research, is done so that we can show an awareness of theory. Now, when we're going towards a subject, particularly when we're doing long form writing, whether we're doing essays, articles, theses, dissertations, we always start with what we're wanting to do. You know, we have this passive idea of our field. We have a passive idea of the theory and the literature about it. And cognitively, we subconsciously file all of the things that we've learned over time. And we put them into our brain, and our brain is kind of like, I'd like to think of it like a citation management software in and of itself, one that we have no access to the library. And when we come to doing any kind of paper or research, we look at inspiration to sort of guide what we think is interesting. I think me and Alexandra had a little conversation about what she may want to consider for her own research. And it's in that zone of not sure, I need to work it out, I need to figure out what questions are interesting to me, how I want to dedicate my time. I would say that this research aspect, and this is ultimately the goal of the literature review, and literature review is that's another whole conversation that we can definitely have in the future. But the goal of the literature review is essentially to situate you as an author within the extant literature. I would go one step further, and I would say that the literature review is ultimately the physical distillation and your own articulation of your reference library. And this all comes back down to attitudes of researching and attitudes of compiling sources. So, for instance, questions that you might ask is, that you should ask yourself rather, is what are the theoretical frameworks that I've used in the past? And then you obviously collate them, you put those references in. Why have I used them? Who developed them? So what is the origins of that theory and of that train of thought? For instance, if we're talking about network analysis, who invented network analysis? What was that originally based off? And what is the genesis of that? Can you create a clear distillation? That's a very different conversation than how am I going to provide a literature review and then get the marks that I need to be able to get onto the next bit, which is my own exciting research. So I would say that there's a difference between compiling a literature review and compiling data management system, which informs your research. The next question you could say is, who has critiqued this idea? What is the genesis of those forms of critique? And can you prove that they are the best choice? And it's not about proving, it's more, can you articulate why this position that you have on this theory is important? I think this is a very overlooked aspect, one in which that any academic study of Assyrians and on the Middle East in general, especially in a Western academic context, that we need to be doing with a lot of rigor. Because if we're able to articulate the reasons why particularly non-dominant strands of, say, history, of political science, of religion, of hardcore STEM, and we're coming at this from a perspective of looking at I say, Assyrian realities or lived communities, we have to do a very good job of arguing what are the frameworks we're using, where do they originate from, what are the critiques, and why indeed our approach is the best for dealing with it, or at least why our articulation of this field is novel for the way we want to go. A lot of the critiques on scholarship comes down to this question: did they do a good job of this or not? Now, ultimately, a lot of your own research is going to be informed by your methodology, about your attention to data gathering. We were talking earlier, Alexandra, about your networking, that you want to come up with a database. Once you get into your lane of database creation, you're in your lane. But how you position that data and how you position the analyses that you pull from it and how that relates to the real world is going to be based upon, you know, the literature review. And I don't want to call it literature review. This is the research space that you're going to be involved in. So we obviously put our research in the context of other broader issues like conflict, history, business management, and you can use any kind of approach. Doesn't matter which particular field or discipline that we're a part of. It's the same ultimate goal and approach that we're using. So the next question you have to ask yourself when we're talking about referencing, and I know this is probably falling on, you know, this I'm preaching to the converted already because you're both doing quite high level courses, but this is being recorded. So for other people, this may be a very important aspect of the chat, and it's like which referencing style to use, because we're talking about Zotero today, and Zotero obviously ultimately gives you freedom over style. You can start with one style, it'll automatically populate it for you, and then you can, underneath the click of a button, change it into a different one. However, how do you go about choosing which style if you have no parameters placed on you? For instance, in your field, you may have a specific style that they use as convention. However, I would like to think of it, especially when you're doing your own research, not to think of it in terms of what impositions are put onto you. I'd like you to think about what referencing style suits you first, and then suits your text type. So different approaches to taking notes and to referencing are going to be important. For instance, if you're from this in the scientific fields, maybe you just need in-text citations just to get all of the data represented, or potentially you're in the humanities and you're using your referencing style as more of an out-of-text situation, which can be used at the same time. Ultimately, people read a lot of articles through the lens of the footnotes and the endnotes to inform the way they read the rest of their text. So that's something you have to have in thought about. So the other issue is that your institution may have a particular preference there. Ultimately, your style referencing, whatever it is, needs to be consistent, and it needs to be able to convey the information that relates to your type of writing. It needs to be clear, formal, professional look, these kind of things. This is where referencing citation management can be very important. Ultimately, referencing footnotes, endnotes, in text, out of text, Chicago, MLA, PSA, any other acronym you want to come up with, is about trust. As an academic, your work needs to convey trust. All academic work, written or otherwise, is communication. And the form of communication that this takes is ultimately authority and trust. How do you build trust in your readership? You need to make sure that you're able to convey that your work is coming from a position that has been considered. I would say a considered approach is one in which your reader reads along your thought process, or at least reads along your literature presentation process, and is comfortable with the selections you've made. When you've made certain points that you've created either a link for them to be able to verify that themselves, or at the very least, that when you're presenting information, to give credit to the fact that, you know, ultimately that we are standing on the shoulders of giants that came before us. we're not poets, however, we can wax poetic. We are building on the works of others, and those people need to be inserted into that so that the work is able to convey this sense of collegiality. Ultimately, academia is about collegiality. So the reason why we've been having this conversation about citation management is because of this ultimate foundational issue of trust. This goes for qualitative and quantitative data. Obviously, they may take different forms. And also that you don't overstep your research by getting to your conclusions before you have actually situated the landscape of the research that's come before you. Researching techniques and referencing techniques will help to build this trust, and managing them also helps you as the author later on to be able to engage with your own work. It's definitely the case that all academics do not remember their references. And at a certain point in their career, will get to a point and say, I know I talked about nationalism and sacred homelands at some point. And I remember that there were a lot of good articles about that, but I can't just remember. So it's also a key to yourself. All right. A lot of people will be listening, if they are listening, some point in the future. If not, Mariam, it's just you two Zotero diehards, so I don't have to convince you of this already. However, it's a very important question. To manage or not to manage? Do you really need data management programs? I would argue that if you've never handwritten your referencing, then you should do it. Hands up, and Mariam, you can just put the hands up cursor if you don't want to put your video on. Hands up if you have handwritten your essays before. All the footnotes. Okay, good. If you haven't, and you're an undergraduate and you're listening to this at some point in the future, it's an essential skill. And I would say that unless you can do that on your own bat, then do not download something like EndNote, Zotero, Mendeley, because ultimately that skill is something that you're going to need to do, because keeping track of references is more than a tick and flick. It's more about engaging with that data. And unfortunately, or fortunately for us, if you've used it a lot, but unfortunately, you can bulk out a good 20 references in less than 10 minutes. You can add them to your Zotero citations, and then you can add them to a document in Word like this, and you have not engaged with it at all. At least when you do it by hand, you have to find the citation, you have to read it, you have to write it out, you have to consider the format that it's in, and you have to have a respect for that whole process. I'm actually very vocal about this at my own university, Sydney Uni, because they provide it as a free service, and first years just download that thing and they get into it, and they mess it up because they haven't written it by hand. So if you're listening to this, there are a lot of tips and tricks with it, but I would say get used to writing it by hand first, and then once you've had it and you don't want to write it by hand anymore, I would say a good year or two of doing it, of all your essays as an undergrad, before moving into a dissertation where, like, my latest article has about 180 footnotes. That's a lot. You don't want to do that by hand. So that's where citation managers. Now, another question, and this, Mariam, will be very relevant, and Alexandra will be relevant for you, and this is something that we need to ask ourselves when we're managing things. It's not just like managing a cafe or a retail shop, as someone would do, whilst they're studying as a second job. You have different management styles. Yes, there's this program called Zotero Device Manager. We're going to get into a second. We'll look at mine, and it's a mess, but I know the mess. It's fine. My employees, i.e. my references, they know their position, and I'm able to tyrannically rule over them with authoritarianism that would make Saddam blush. But you have to ask yourself, what kind of autocrat are you going to be? Ultimately, it's about dictatorship. You need to dictate over your references. You let them take over. You have a democratic sphere building up, and then there's going to be a coup in your device manager, and all of a sudden, your attention is going to be grabbed, and it's going to become very inefficient. And this is like a trope that comes from note-taking subcultures. but there are a bunch of different themes or meta characters. And it's ultimately, are you a librarian? Are you a manager? Or are you a gardener? Now, I would say that these are also different writing styles. Some people are librarians. They have a Dewey system. They want to set up their discipline. They want to set up their sub-disciplines. They want to set up different case studies, and they want to have it ordered like a library. So you go into a library, you can find your way around that library because everything is ordered. Or are you a manager? Do you consider what you are wanting to reference on a project-by-project basis? For instance, you're doing a dissertation. So you'll have chapters within your dissertation. You'll have different references and some that will span across multiple, but you're going to have distinct references. And are you going to consider your project, which is either your paper, your dissertation? Let's look at a dissertation as a good one. You're both probably having to do one at the moment. Thankfully, I never have to do one again. No, I'm only joking. I write a book and it's not fun. I swear, looking at your dissertation after you finish it is the worst thing in the world. So like writing, it's one thing, it's one kind of hell. Editing and submitting it's another kind. Getting your revisions back is another kind of hell. And then not looking at it for a year and then rereading it and hating it, needing to publish it, that's a big issue. Anywho, are you considering it as a project basis? So if that's the case, each one of your chapters will have a certain amount of references. So you could organize this on a project-by-project basis. For instance, you'll set up your Zotero library in a project-by-project basis. You insert everything into your library, and then you create subfolders. And those subfolders and those subcategories within those subfolders relate to those things. That way also, you can start building out bibliographies of every chapter once you start filing things across. So, do you want to walk into a library of your mind? Do you want to walk into the plant floor, the factory floor, and look at the spreadsheet of all the work that needs to be done and how your references are going to fit into that? Or are you kind of like me and you're a bit of a gardener? You read something, you like it, you put it in. You then, after a bunch of things have come in, go, apparently anthropology is something that I'm into at the moment. So you create a subfolder of anthropology. You grab all the anthropology related ones and put them in, but you miss a few. And then you see weeds growing in one. So then you go to another way. These are like writing styles. So this is what like Neil Gaiman would say. You have either architects or gardeners. You have people who design the foundations for everything. They know what the whole thing is going to look like before they finish. They create the categories and then they have to just populate it. Or are you a gardener and you write, an interesting thought, you create a subtitle about it. You write another interesting thought, you realize that there's a connection between those things. The Obsidian community are gardeners, and that's another program. We won't touch on that today, but it's a very cool program. And if you're a gardener out there, then I definitely suggest that it's a good way to go about taking notes. So you have to ultimately ask yourself these questions. And I think, Mariam, when you're getting at the question of how do I organize, I need good tips and tricks to be able to just organize this mess of stuff I have in here. Well, why do you want to use it? Are you just trying to get through your course? Or are you trying to compile knowledge for decades? Or are you just trying to find and navigate your way around literature? It depends on the type of person you are. All right, so citation management options, we'll make this really quickly. We have Zotero plus integrations. We have EndNote plus integrations plus library integrations. EndNote is particularly good. I don't like it at all, but I'll give it its due. A lot of university libraries will have EndNote buttons clicked into it. So you can automatically just add it to your EndNote file manager without having to add in Deweys and magic cursors and whatnot. And there's also Mendeley, which has a lot of data sophistication. For instance, I didn't even know, what was it called, Everleaf? Alexandra? That program, Everleaf?
Oh, Evernote? Oh, Evernote. Yeah, that's for LaTeX.
Yeah, what's it called?
No.
No.
I don't know. I don't know which one.
That LaTeX program that has a Mendeley integration.
Oh, it's Overleaf. Yeah, that's the one.
Overleaf. That's the one. Yeah. So I think like Mendeley is very good because it has a coding background to it. It's able to have data sophistication with other different data management softwares, not just reference management softwares, also data management softwares. And in the case of this LaTeX stuff that we're going to hear from potentially next week, has those kind of links. But we're just going to focus on Zotero. So the next question is, after you ask what type of person you are, is do you want a little or do you want a lot out of Zotero? Because despite it being a neat little program, it can work very basically for you. It can help you write your references in a clear, consistent way. And you can put them into your articles. And then you can, with a click of the button, you can switch from, for instance, using footnotes, bang, to endnotes, or from Chicago, bang, to MLA, footnotes to in-text. It'll then go through and it'll format all of your references in text and in your bibliography to suit that format. You can also make your own format. For instance, if you're just writing for yourself and you're not looking so much at an academic perspective and you want to come up with your own little format, you can insert that and it will automatically apply it to everything. We'll go through it a little bit. So you have to ask yourself, and I've sort of looked at 4 different categories of how Zotero can be used. You can use it just for referencing. Just for referencing. It's a bibliographic software to help you consistently put references. You can use it for research, i.e., it is a funnel in which you go out into the world of the data space and you can use your own data. For instance, I use it for photography. And you can insert data and different research that you do into one sphere, into one landscape. It's an online landscape you can take anywhere with you. Is it that you want to use it for reference management? i.e., is it more than just a referencing tool? Is it a reference management tool? i.e., you want to do 10 articles and you want a management software that you can put things that you read, things that you are going to be using for those different projects, and order them in a way so that you can then go back and manage the references that you have or the research that you've got so that you can pull it out when you're doing new projects. I think most people would fit into this one. Then, and this is where I use it, as well as the others, it's Zotero for note management, i.e., I use Zotero to inform my note-taking and research process. It is the landscape in which I use to make notes from articles that I've read, to store those notes and those references, and even keep the source material located into it. So I have all the PDFs for all of my references in Zotero. So I no longer have, I'll show you later how horrendously organized my references used to be. They used to all be in all these different subfolders and folders on my computer. Now, there are different ways to go about it because some of these things cost money and there are some process around it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're just going to go through quickly my Zotero library because I've never shown anyone, and now we're going to record looking at it. So bad, so bad. But I'm doing this as to help people because you can start it in a way. I've done all 3. I've been a librarian and it's gone okay. I've been a project manager and it's gone kind of all right, I guess. And then I've also been a gardener at the same time. So it looks very unorganized. However, we'll have a look at it now and we'll see how it goes. All right, so let's stop sharing this. And then we're going to go through a little bit of a workflow. So let's do everything good, Mariam, by the way, hands up if you're all clear. you have any questions? Do you know what type of person you are?
I guess I'm a gardener too.
Yes. Listen, you have to be at ease with being a gardener. That's why I use the word, that's why I like the word gardener. Because
I know it's a very positive term.
yeah,
It doesn't look so positive in reality.
Listen, let's do it. We're gonna do it together. We're gonna collaborate. So it doesn't work so well in reality because usually there's this sense of anxiety that overwhelms when we look at the mass of notes that the references that we've collected. And then when we start to engage with it, i.e., we start looking at our research realm, our landscape that we've created. We've got some flowers over here, and we've got some trees over there, and some boulders over there, and we don't know what we want it to look like, and we just keep tending to it. Now, I would say to deal with that, you can either create a structure, or you can be at ones with your garden, and you can keep improving on it slowly, making sure things don't get out of wrap. So we'll get into that now. Alexandra, what style do you have?
I think I might be a librarian. I can share also my Zotero page, but it's probably not as good as yours, Daniel. But yeah, I think I'm a librarian.
First things first, there is no good. There's different approaches to it. And mine's a very good example of how it can all go awry. So we're going to have a look at that. We're going to have a look at the manager now. I don't think, I was going to do a whole download thing and make sure that people knew how to download it and access it. But what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at my library. We're going to have a look at the different ways that I use to capture ideas. And then we're going to look at a couple of add-ons that I use to really boost the way, particularly a gardener would want to use this. So let's have a quick look, share screen. What do I do? Let's have a look at test collection. No, we'll, how do I share my full screen here? Share. Our desktop, that's it. Okay. Now I'll just use this. All right, cool. So here's my Zotero. Don't judge me. Can you see it, everyone?
Yeah.
Okay. So you guys are in the way. So this is my library. Now, first things first, everyone knows, hands up, everyone knows how to insert items into Zotero. Okay, good. So for people at home, you have this. This is what Zotero looks like. On this side here, you guys can see my cursor. Cool. On this side here, you have your folders. Yeah, it's a mess. And then in this side here is where you have each one of your references. So for instance, this one that I've clicked at the moment, it's a journal article. It's called Homelands and Nationalism. I'm using it for my current article. And it has all of the information built into it. So I have the abstract here. I have the publication name, the volume, the issues, the page numbers, date. You can put the series, if it's in a book series, the abbreviation, DOI, ISSN, all these references, where it came from, the date it was added, blah, blah, blah. You can also change this depending on what type it is. So they give you some flexibility. So it's an artwork. A lot of my photography I put in here, it's an artwork. You have a blog, you have a bill, you have an encyclopedia article, all these different ways. And the way that they then manifest in your article, in your final Word document will depend on the type of item it is. So the way that you insert into here is that you have here, you can add a book section, or you can add anything you want, and you can populate it by note. So for instance, we went book, it would come up here, book, and we can manually type it all out. Now, for instance, if we had the DOI, let's copy this one just for an example, we can click this magic wand and we can enter it here. And it'll think, then it'll add it, and it'll be like they're fantastic. So I'll go through in a second, just in case people don't know how to use it, but there's a lot of videos online which show you basic import. What we're looking at right now is the way that we organize things. So let's have a look to the left here, because this is ultimately where it comes down to. Now, this is the reference. This is all the reference I have here. They all get added into your library. There's a lot of things here. Cool. But you need a bit of sophistication when you're doing it. So I have at the moment, I exist in the top three. Now I have general research, which is where I put everything, and I ultimately categorize them into different fields. So the way that you would previously use tags, or that I would previously use tags, and if you like tags, then you can add tags to these. So for instance, when have I used it? It was a while ago. So for instance, let's just say I've downloaded this one. It's called Homelands and Nationalism. I can click tags. And what I can do is I can just say it's anthropology. It's not. Let's put it what it actually is. It's nationalism. It's theory. It also looks at imagined communities. All right. So they're different tags that I add to it. And those tags I can use later on to be able to file it. So for instance, I've imported it into my library. It's over here. I've added some tags to it. For instance, this one has a few tags here. This is a good one. Rage and carnage in the name of God. So it's got the tags. History Africa, intergroup relations. And from here, when I want to go back into it at another time, I know where in my library of over here, anthropology, archaeology, Assyrian studies, color, conflict, geography. I know where I can file it based upon those things. So that's one way of doing it. You can start filing it into different related topics based upon what you're wanting to look at. So for instance, if I'm looking at my library, I've read something interesting, I put it into my library, and then once I want to come and gather information, I search for my, you guys are in the way at the moment. I search for my tags. Let's say it's religion. Okay, tags come up with here, religion and culture, religion and politics, religious aspects. Then I can grab it and I put it into this thing that I'm looking at called religion. And I drop it there. And now it's sitting in there. And I'm like, great. Every time now I need to look at religion or use religion as a concept, this is going to come up. Now, this is a pretty basic way of doing it. I find that it's actually probably this is a very Gardner approach. You sort of add everything into your library. You tag it. Every time you insert anything, you tag it. You be vigilant with that. And if we have a look at this one, for instance, I have the PDF in here. Oh, no, I don't have the PDF in here. Let's use this one rather. Sorry, here, I got the PDF. And we go into it. I can very quickly come up with some tags. Nationalism, homeland, partition. Pretty much every journal article you download will have keywords. So they should instantaneously be tags to you. But also the tags may be something that you particularly interested in about. So, for instance, if we scan through this one, what are homelands? What's a word that Alexandra said in my bio that may be very interesting for me to look at? Hands up. Territoriality. Just a fancy word for looking at relationships over geographic areas. Cool. So for me, this should definitely be a tag. Later on, if I ever need to go back to it, for whatever reason, I don't have to worry that my petunias are over there and my cypress trees are over here, because I've got a nice little sign on them. And when I walk through my garden, I can see my sign. When I want to look it up, it's there. So I would say that one good habit you can get into very quickly is by assigning, and let's do that now, different tags to these things. So nationalism, beautiful. What else did we have? We had materiality. We had territoriality. And we can leave it at that for the moment. But if I kept on going through it, maybe like a little 5-minute scan, writing just with pad and paper. I usually use pad and paper to write down a lot of my notes. And then I put those notes here. So the other really interesting way you can use this, and the way that I used it in the past, is that I add notes into the item. For instance, you have your own note-taking method. For instance, you may have a Word document and you input your reference into the top of the note document. And as you're reading, you do notes. Or you may have an Adobe file. And as you read it, you scan, you highlight, and you pull your notes from it and you put it all into a Word document and use it later. Well, I would add it in here. So therefore you have your notes and your tags related to this thing. Related one is where you create relations between them. I wouldn't worry about that. That's getting to the realm of more effort than it's worth. But I definitely say that even if you're just scanning something, as you're putting it in, you've got an article, you've downloaded it, you've imported it, you've had a quick scan, and you've come up with a few tags. Add your first few notes about it, and they could just be notes to yourself. So for instance, it could be, this article is relevant to the forthcoming publication I have on Assyrian territory and indigenous identity. I don't know, whatever it is. Excuse my writing. It's this kind of thing. I would be very, very simple with it. Let it be a place where you can just engage a couple of thoughts, or it could be like, I think this article is horrible and I want to critique it in my lit review for my dissertation. That's it. And then it's there. At any point when you come back and you're like, oh, I think I had a pretty strong connection with this piece. I wonder what my note about it, and you can see here what it does is that the item actually places a note file in that thing. So not only do you have your PDF of the actual article, you also have then a note file full of, oh, what I actually thought about it. I liked it. Yeah, great. Now, in this case, some people add tags like, sorry, my throat's getting a bit sore. They add tags like, they add emojis. For instance, they'll have like a tick emoji, and that tick emoji just means like it. Or they'll have a scribbling emoji, and that pen emoji will mean I need to write about this. Or they'll have a big X, which means, lampoon. So there's all different ways you can go about it, but I'd definitely say that engaging with these other tags here, these other different files here, is going to be a good way to deal with it. Now, yeah. Alexander.
I have a question. So is there a way when you open the document and you're reading it and you're taking notes within it, does it show up in the notes tab on the right-hand side too?
Yeah, so we'll do that in a second. Actually, let's do it now. So there's a really good, you guys can see this up here, what I'm doing. Okay, cool. So there's an add-on called Zotfile, and there's an add-on called MD Notes for Zotero. Write them down and download them. Now, I've got a link on in the slideshow that I'll share with everyone at the end. It's a really good YouTube video. Hands up if you use iPad or some kind of tablet to read stuff. Mariam, no? Well, they're not so important. But you do, Alexandra, do you use an iPad?
I do, yeah.
Best workflow in the world. It's coming up. And you need these two things. Now, I would download them because they do a couple of things. See here, the MD notes, it exports Zotero items and notes to Markdown. We'll explain what that is. And then Zotfile also, here, Zotfile here, it doesn't give us a description. But essentially what Zotfile does is it renames your attachments. So what I'm going to do quickly, let's go resume share, stop share. Let's just get my screen up, share. Okay, you guys can see my desktop. Let's just go through a little bit of a workflow to show the way that this would work. Why it would be important. All right, so let's just jump into the library. So this is the University of Sydney Library. And we're going to go down here and we're going to find something interesting to us. Let's use easy stuff. Let's look up Assyrian history. All right. So we go to Assyrian history, hoping to find something written by either me or, there we go. So perfect. So we click into this book, and it's a very good book. Whoever hasn't read it should read it. So we go into it. No, we didn't go into it. Where is it? All right. Now, the add-on, this is a Zotero add-on right here. So one of the add-ons Zotero does is it integrates into your Internet Explorer. Hands up if you already do that. Do you do that, Alexandra? Okay.
No, I just drop things in.
So it's a really good way of doing it, because what it will do right now, it's picked up that there's something here. So I click Save to Zotero. It saves here to my library. I can decide where in my library I want it to save it to, but I always put it into my library first. And then it does that. So if we go back into Zotero, it's here. The whole reference, pretty much. Now, be careful. Sometimes it doesn't have number of pages, doesn't have addition, doesn't have a couple of the information, so you have to add them separately. Now, this is just for people who don't use the program. Another way that you can deal with this is you go into the book. Sorry, guys, you have to go through this silly process with my university. Terms and conditions, yes, I agree. Sorry, guys. They've got like really intense on security because for some reason, apparently academic knowledge is like the most important thing for us to be able to censor these days. All right, so anyway, we're going through. All right, signed in. Okay, so the other way that we can insert this is we can grab the ISBN number right here. We can copy it. We can go back to our Zotero. We can click the magic wand button and we can just enter it here. And bang, it comes up again. Now, is there a difference between the two? Aha, there is. Danger, danger, beware. Different ways of inserting things into Zotero have different categories. We just added them. So this one, the first one, doesn't have a number of pages. It has the publisher as University Press. However, the DOI, sorry, the ISBN, gives it a proper publisher, gives you a number of pages. So, although this is the bit of danger, although people attempted to add things from the Internet Explorer, it's a very good way to do it when you're on, say, New York Times. We just go New York Times. We go to this article. Aha! It picks it up again. We're just zooming around here and we're clicking. Oh, wow, saved as Zotero. It knows New York Times. Let's click that one. Yeah, we want to put it into our library. We go back to our thing. Okay, perfect. It's got it all perfectly. That's when it's interesting. That's when it's important because you're going through your archiving. I would say you're looking at a blog, you're looking at a magazine, you're looking at a newspaper. It's a very, very good way to do it. However, there are still some issues with it, i.e. you still need to go back to your source material and just verify these items. But it's a very good way to do it. It also gives you the date that you accessed it, the date that it was added. And it also helps you out later on with being able to figure out which bits are important. Like New York Times, Al Jazeera, CNN, majority have formatted their papers with a lot of these Internet Explorers via their science teams to be able to make sure that they have all this relevant information in it. As a gardener, Mariam, this is a fantastic way to go about it because you're adding things in, you're having a fun time, you're moving on. This is interesting, that's interesting to me. It gives you a snapshot. However, the previous habit we said, for a gardener in particular, that's very important, is once you've added it, you add your tags, you put a note to yourself. Give yourself a little identification. So for instance, if we look back at this one, what is it about? It's about Supreme Court. It's about draft. What is it about? Oh, this is about Supreme Court inquiry on seized phones, affidavits. I don't know. You guys are in America. I should know. You know, Mariam. Sorry, not you, Mariam. You're in Milano. Alexandra, you know what's going on here. So there's this is a political column. It's about investigation into abortion, blah, blah, blah. You add in all of your things as you put it in. So rather than do the, well, wow, it's got a lot of the tags already in here. Funny that. Those tags are already now embedded into your library. So one of the benefits of not just using the DOI is that it'll have a lot of tags built in. The notes you can then create from those tags. I would use the notes as a little engagement for yourself on how you use it. For instance, this is just go long form. Don't write note, just write the way that you would write. This it's like stream of consciousness. This is a good source for looking at the relationship between court rulings and social contract issues such as abortion. Or, similarly, you could say New York Times presents this information with a clear left-leaning bias. Look at paragraph 3 next time. Again, don't have to get too fancy with it. Just whatever jumps out at you about it. Or, they engage with something. Just whatever comes out of you. Don't make any kind of rule about it. Ultimately, by doing this, you're engaging with your source. The biggest issue, especially for a gardener and for a librarian, is you forget what's in your library because you haven't engaged with it long enough. You just go on a bibliography rampage. Now, let's do that. Let's go on a rampage. You know how quick it is for me to just for us or for anyone to grab information haphazardly? Oh my God, it's so simple. If you're on a library page, check me out right now. Let's get crazy with things. Let's click that one. Let's put that one in there. All right, let's go down here. Assyria. Yeah, okay, this is important to me. Let's add that one. Let's put that one in here. All right, what else we got? Oh, merchant seek nuclear physicist. That seems also could be interesting. I'll put it in a read later column. You go into that one, you create that one. Okay, this one over here. Let's add this one in there. All of a sudden, you go back to your Zotero library. There's still a couple more. Hannibal Travis, shout out. All right. We go back over here. It's like, what has happened? What are any of these things? What do they even mean? Getting rid of all of them. Sorry. Haven't engaged with them. Part of the process, I guess, that is the most important when it comes to organizing it is remembering what you have. Now, you've highlighted yourself as a gardener, Mariam. Be a gardener. Don't try to be a librarian. Alexandra, you're a librarian. Come up with a great filing system for yourself. You already know how to do that. You speak code. That's just the way you are. The different personality styles for everything. Habits within the filing process will make you know what's in there better. They'll also create links for you later on to search for things. So, for instance, if we're looking at this and we've created our tags and we've got our notes and our note, I think I deleted our note. No, I understand. It's there. Later on, we can always find it. If you do your notes, stream of conscious, it's your idea. You've already engaged with it. So you'll be able to rethink of your idea when it comes up. But if you just add things haphazardly, you most times won't have this engagement. Now, let's look at something like, for instance, Homelands and Nationals. Okay, well, let's deal with an article because I think this is a good way to start. Where are we? Hello. So is this an article or is this a book? This is a book, isn't it? Let's do an article. Which is a good article you've read from here, Alexandra? Let's do one of Sargon's ones. Why not?
Yeah.
Keep it in the family. Silly library. Right. Okay. So when you go online, another way that you can also go about this, and this is usually the way that I download stuff. So I've showed it for two different ways. Number one, you add in the DOI, your ISBN, it'll magic it out. The other way is that you use your internet browser. And the third way, and you know what? We're not actually going to do Sargon's book because it's not an article. Let's just search something like, let's do that one that we looked at, nationalism. And identity. Better with an article. Let's publication type. Let's just do articles. Okay, here we go. Gender dimensions of Catalan nationalism and identity construction. Not very Assyrian, but let's just do it anyway, just to see the way it's about. All right. So the way that I usually deal with this, and again, you may not want to file all of your PDFs in Zotero, but I find that it's a very good way to go about it because you have your note, your tag, your organization, and the actual file itself for future reference, all embedded within the one place. In the one manager. So in this case, I don't click this button. I also don't have a look at the ISBN number or the ISSN numbers. I download it. So I download the PDF. It'll then ask me a lot of questions. Will ask me today. All right. All right, download. Let's download a PDF. Yes, we want. Sorry, guys, this is a bit. All right, here, it's there. So the problem when you download academic articles, and you probably notice this as you download a whole lot of them, they always have really bad titles. So it's like 17504831668396293. So then you have to go into that file, drag it somewhere. You're going to remember it. Or not remember it, change the name, blah, blah, blah. One of the little hacks, thank you for the two that have actually attended today, because you're now getting to some tricks. One of the good things about having Zotfile MD Manager is that you download it, and then you just drop it into Zotero. No, sorry, that didn't work. Let's drop it into general research. All right, we'll go back. Come on, did this earlier and it worked. All right. Okay, there it is. Ah, what happened? Did you see that? Do we need an instant replay? Does anyone know just what happened there? I dropped the PDF in. It automatically filled it out and renamed it Ivinson, year date, title. Who's mind blown? No one. Okay. Yeah, Mary was mind blown. Okay. So I find this a very, very easy thing to do. This is a very quick way to be able to organize your things. Because even then, if you want to just take it out, let's just say you don't have enough space on your Zotero because it only comes with 200 megabytes. And I think it costs a certain amount per year to get more data. You can just look up online how to integrate this with your storage on your computer or with Dropbox. I'm not going to go through that because it's a bit of a pain. And people do online on YouTube do a better job of exploring it. But I just have a subscription. It's like $100 a year and all my references go in here and I don't have to worry about it. But even if you don't, what you can do is you can add it to here. It can rename it for you. It creates the full description, and then you can add it into your file. You can take it out and you can add it wherever you want. You can add it into another system. But that saves you from doing it. It saves you from having to go back into it. And from in here, you can add more notes. So one of the ways that we said earlier about one of the powers of using this is that it's also a good note management system. So more than the general, this is what I think about court rulings note, you can also, if you've added it in this way, double click your gender dimensions of Catalan nationalism and identity construction on Twitter article, and you can start going through it. So we start going through it together, and we're going to go, well, let's take some notes. Oh, Catalonians have been experiencing a strong unexpected increase in secessionism. Fantastic. That's interesting for us. So we highlight that. And then we go down here and we're like, oh, one of the factors that has been accredited has a strong mobilizing effect. Oh, yeah, that seems super interesting to us as well. We highlight that. Okay. So we go through and make annotations. We may also go, okay. Yeah, so we can do that in Zotero where we make up all our links. We can come back into this. Now this PDF will be annotated already. We can double click, we can go down here into MD notes, and we can export to Markdown. Please export to Markdown. Right. And it didn't do it. That's really annoying. So pardon me, guys. Oh, lame. Okay, I'm not sure why that's not working. All right, alternately. So if we go over to here I'll go to one that I did yesterday. Let's go to, okay. Raging cards in the name of God. Okay, let's go to another. Sorry, guys. Okay. So, all right. What it should do, I'm not sure why it's not doing it right now, but I'm not going to waste everyone's time going through, is once you've gone through and edited it, once you've gone through and annotated your PDF, so for instance, I'll go into this PDF, and I've marked out my notes, I can then extract notes from it. So all of your notes then that I've highlighted end up here, and they have here the correct citation from that source, so that you can then grab this if you want to and start placing it inside your Word document. This also works really well if you have an iPad and you're wanting to use references on your iPad. So I have my iPad here. I'm going to cancel my video. Background. Let's go with none. We're out of Iraq now and we're in my room. Okay, so there's a flow here that I want to touch on. And essentially that is using your iPad as your note-taking device. So once you've added in an item and it is being renamed, so for instance, this is an Assyrian one. Yeah, Valiant Pitfalls of External State Building in post-2003 Iraq. Once you've downloaded your Citation Manager's Zot file, so I think that we showed that up in here. We download one called Zot file. So it's this Zot file preferences. And I'll add a link to show how to do that. We can then go in here and we can send it to tablet, or we could send it to a subfolder that we have on our tablet. So in this case, I've already submitted, I've added one, this over here. It's living in the yellow zone. I added it to my tablet. It sends it to, so you'd have to use some kind of database manager. So for instance, do you guys use Dropbox, Google Drive, one of these things? Essentially, you have to add one of those to it, and I'll add the link on how to go about it. But ultimately, you open up using an Adobe Reader, or you use your Dropbox, whatever, to open up your PDF. You make notes and annotations on your iPad or on your computer, and then you extract them. See, get from tablet, and once you get from tablet, it then populates it over here into your notes. So in this case, I have here, these quotation marks are ones that I've highlighted. And these here are notes that I've taken myself. So potential questions for LeMay on social imaginary invoked by intervention actors. That's a note that I made myself on that while I was reading it. So your process goes is that you send it to your tablet, you open up your tablet, and I'll give you the link to make sure that you know exactly the processes for downloading it. And then you can annotate and then mark up and put your own notes. And one of the really good ways to go about this is that a lot of the times when we're reading an article or something like this, we don't really want to type it. So you could, for instance, I'm going to do an example one. So everyone can see what's going on. I just can't, you won't be able to see it on my iPad as well. But most either iPads or tablets, even your computers will have a dictation tool. So what you can do is you can read your article, you can make notes as you go along, highlight as you go along. Then you can also create a note, click your dictation number, read it out. I think these are all read. Yeah, look, very important. I've just made as a note. Mapping and data sets are mappable, and both actions are construction, therefore simply discover the world into colors. I think I just read this. This is all just reading for me. And then once I've extracted back from here, once you've saved the actual PDF, this will pick it up because it's connected. And then once you pull it out, it'll save those annotations into a note file. You can then use these note files to either search for them, or you can pull them out and then put them into either a journal article that you're looking for or something like that. So that's one way that I like to take notes using it. However, the organization of these notes, at least for me, come through when I'm searching. So for instance, I'm looking at anthropology. I go through a search function on my library. I find ones that are interesting for me. I put them into my research. Now, another way that you can go about, as I said earlier, is that you could be a project manager. Now, I tried to be a project manager earlier, somewhere over here during this thing called the PhD. And it turned into an absolute storm. It became this other different set of references that I put in. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong with it. However, all of a sudden, things that I think are interesting during my PhD, this is like a little PhD library. A better way to go about it is to create them using your chapters. So for instance, here, I have all the ones I use for my literature review. And I just went through my library, and as I was creating my literature review, I then pulled them out from here. So using just a control click, or you can grab it and you can put it inside. And then now, you know, as you're reading something, oh, I've added something in here. So let's just say that we're looking at that one we added at the start, the Supreme Court one. We've added our tags, put some notes. We've got the document in here as well. And you know what? we want to make an action. We want to make a decision about this research. So the other way to go about it is saying, what do I want to do with it? For instance, let's go into this test collection. Let's create a new subfolder. Let's call this subfolder to read. Let's have one here called to review someday. Base theory. Now you can come up with whatever categories you want, but essentially now the organization process will do is what you're actually going to do with it. So you have to make a decision. And I would say, even as a gardener, making a couple of tags, engaging with the document in one way, then you can go through and review and come up with your notes and add them to it and blah, blah, blah. But I would say before you let that reference go, decide what you want to do with it. Now, you can create a folder like this, which says, this is a base theory, important, like you can name it extremely important. You could name it whatever you like. But I say, no, this one is actually base theory. So I've made now a decision with it that later on, when I come into my library, I don't have to go and look through this whole thing about when I added things and what I wanted to do with it. I've already made a decision. What base theory do I have? This is a base theory. This is important for later. Or if this is to read later, you can put it here, or to review someday. For instance, there's an article over here. Let's say writing culture, fantastic article, by the way. It's a book, fantastic book. And I'm like, it's not actually that relevant to what I'm doing, but I want to keep it and I want to remember it. And right now there's, I don't know how many thousands of references here. I'm not going to remember. I'm not going to see it again, but I will put it into a review someday list. Because I know that it's important. I think later I may want to look at it. And then after you finish your dissertation or after you finish your essay, you have come back and you're like, what were those review some days? And you come back and you're like, oh, that's right. I really wanted to talk about that. And now that I have some time because someone's marking my PhD, I get to go back and have a look at these things that I wanted to do. Or you can then start putting them into projects, for instance. So in this case, I had a thesis. So I started dumping everything into the chapters. I had to make a decision with everything that I looked at, and I put them into those chapters so that when I went to go and write them, I knew where I needed to look. I also then knew what other things were important. Now, I wanted to get into another note-taking aspect of this, but my throat is starting to hurt quite a lot. And that's over here. So the folders themselves have a lot of power. They summarize over here different things that you want them to. So for instance, in this case, I've just got tags. So there's a lot in here because it's my whole thesis. But essentially, these come in handy when you want to create keywords or you want to create index notes. You already have all the tags that you've assembled in all of your articles summarized into this one folder. So for instance, if I go into peer review, it's not changing, not sure why. Sorry, guys. Any questions so far? Sorry, I'm leaving it a bit like that. I'm dazing a little bit. Sorry about that. Any questions at the moment? No, Alexandra. No. Okay. One other point I want to make is that you can also use this if you're looking to organize it into different subsections. So if you're looking to, Alexandria, you're doing this as a, you want to create a library. I wouldn't just folder everything into library if you want to create the librarian's perspective. I'd go into create a general research library, which has all of your different subfolders. and then have different areas where you want things to be. For instance, you could have writing guides. I have writing guides for writing monograph. You have peer reviewed. So for instance, I undergo some peer reviews. There's a couple of articles here that I've done. They go into there, and you can then draft versions. So for instance, your friend sends you one of their articles. They want you to review it, chuck it in, put it inside, because they've already done a lot of the research. For instance, this one that I reviewed over here, there's a lot of annotations that I pulled out of this that not necessarily useful right now because it's an unpublished work. However, it allows me to review this for someone else with a lot more clarity. Because the big issue I find is that when you're reading someone else's work, or you're doing a peer review or something like this, is that you pull it up, you start annotating it in Word, and the Word just becomes this big list of comments and things that they have to answer to. However, Zotero can help that by converting into a PDF, number one, inserting it in, making notes and comments about it, and then being able to extract these and then give people feedback on parts of it that are interesting, rather than going through and scanning and commenting as you go along. So for me, the main ones are general research that I have writing guides that I use. It hasn't synced with my computer. Peer review, so different peer reviews that I've done, and then draft versions of things that I've reviewed for other people. So that's kind of the way that I organize it. Now, the next aspect is obviously looking at your projects and breaking it down into, say, chapters or into articles. Whichever one it is, I would just suggest being consistent with it. So as I said earlier, coming up with the habit of creating a tag, taking a note, and importing it so that it has either the document inside, or that your document is renamed into a way that can be used later, is going to be helpful. Because the reason why that it's helpful is that this document name is the way that this database now understands this attachment. If you didn't change the name and format of it, it would understand it as, 1463287584433. And that's the way that it would come out now if you then reference it in your Word document. As said, I'm getting a bit ill, so I may need to stop soon. And I think I'm starting to fade out. You can probably tell. But we can go into some of these into more detail potentially next time. Any particular questions that have come up? Mariam, Alexandra?
No questions. Just a thank you for this dropping thing, because I didn't know of, and I used to struggle between my Arabic and Kurdish and English sources, trying to type them in manually and organize them, and that was, again, a storm, just like you said. So this will help me a lot.
That's great. And I would consider, like, we probably already do this, but if it is the case that you have languages or languages of sources, I would create the habit of, once you've dropped it in there and it's renamed it, and again, use MD notes and Zot file add-ons, that you could have within your library. You could have, English, have English one. You could have one in here. Sorry, languages of sources or something. You could have this as English, Kurdish, say Arabic, and then you can start sorting them. So once it goes into your library and it's all in there, you can, one of the decisions you want to make with it is come up with a next step. So you've added it in, you've put some kind of note or some kind of tag to it. It's already filled out some for you. You've had a quick scan, and you have to decide what you want from it. Now, if what you want from it is to decipher it from other different sources, which are based on different languages, then you can now grab it from in here, and then, we can put gendered dimensions of Catalan into English. And then, that it's all your English sources. if you're working on a paper at that moment, you may decide, okay, I want these specific things that are connected to this. For instance, this is a Royal Anthropology Institute paper that I gave. It can become a little workspace that you then use to make a decision about. Now, after that paper is done, you can then delete it, you can archive it, you can rename it, you can create a bibliography from this collection, and then you can delete it out of there. So there are a lot of different ways you can then make your next step. I guess the point I was trying to make is that after you've added it in, come up with a method and use your own method, but come up with a method to make a decision about it. What are you using it for? And what are you going to do about it? Are you going to put a language decision? Are you going to put a project decision? Or are you going to do some form of librarian duty? Are you going to then file it into a subcategory? Now, I'll put this link up here, and I would suggest everyone to go to it. How do I do this? Should I add it into the chat?
Yeah.
So this is very good for anyone with an iPad. This is the way to get it all done. This will also show you how to download Zotfile and MD notes. Now, don't get lost in a lot of these YouTubers. There's so many YouTubers out there which have so many different ways of dealing with it. But this guy seems to be pretty good. He goes into Obsidian integration. Don't worry about that right now. We may do an Obsidian class later at a later date, and I'll show you what that looks like. That's the way, and I'll just give a quick preview. Although I need to stop talking at some point and take some painkillers, but that's where
that the link isn't working, the video.
Isn't it?
No. I think he probably deleted it or
no way. That's YouTube, Zotero, iPad. This guy.
So
is that a different one? Does that work?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So that's a really good workflow how to do it. Now he has this thing called Obsidian, and that's essentially if you master this kind of process of pulling out notes from the things that you've done. Let me just go into one where I actually have notes. Here we go. It essentially your notes get pulled out of your iPad after you've done this workflow. I put in the notes. And if you're watching this, it's just go on YouTube, go Zotero iPad, and click the second one. Is that once you get this note here, you can add this to a note-taking program. Now, this is where it gets all a bit crazy. And your note-taking program ends up becoming this web of ideas. So for instance, if I was in Allo, this immediately will, from my Zotero, from that item, create a new source with the name of the title I'm working on. It'll import all my notes. This is the notes that I had from it. And then I can start summarizing those notes into different subcategories. So for instance, the one that I've done here is religious violence, distinctive features. And then it becomes like a thought. That thought is connected to this note from Allo, which we just wrote before. And then it may be something that I want to then use somewhere later on. So I say, well, religious violence has distinctive features. You know, for instance, I can then start writing my own prose on this idea. And then later on, when I come to doing my research, you can then come down and you can have a look at what things those are connected to. For instance, it's connected to this idea that categorizing violence is not a priority for analysts. And that idea I've connected to terrorist organizations' claims attacks that they didn't commit. That happens. The whole idea of production of knowledge, and that conflict data might not be accurate. And this is sort of like a next level kind of approach to taking notes. and we won't get into that today because I'm feeling quite ill. But getting on top of Zotero and creating nodes that are connected to the reference itself will allow you to be able to do integrations like that and do other thought processing integrations, which you may find useful. So I guess to summarize, you have to decide on what kind of person you are, if you're a gardener, if you're a manager, or if you're a librarian. Now, you could be a hybrid. You may want to garden and then you start managing things and then you want to create some kind of file. You can do all three at once, I guess. But also understand that it's okay to be anyone. And, don't be ashamed, Miriam, if your thing looks like a complete mess like mine. I am a gardener through and through, and I've dabbled with libraries and managers processes. But by keeping good nodes and by keeping good tags, you can then use the fact that you've got an environment here that you can keep on enriching the more you engage with it. So if that's the case, you have to then decide what type of ways can I import my data and my material? I think that the PDF dragging in way is a very good way to do it. And then to make some decision. So create some note tags from it, create initial notes about that item, your initial impressions. And then the last thing is just make a decision. What am I going to do with it? Don't leave it here. Put it somewhere. It doesn't need to be the final place, but either you're researching and you're referencing for a project, and in that case, you could think, I want to create a project file. Or you may want to sort it into a different language source, or you could even do that with your tags if you wanted to. Or you want to come up with some kind of instruction to yourself, which is, this is very important. It's a 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, you come up with whatever you like. But make a decision about what you want to do with it. And I think we'll leave it for there because I need to take some painkillers.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for taking the time. I mean, you did a really fantastic job, a whole hour and a half with helping us learn more about Zotero and the many aspects surrounding it and about MD notes. Yeah, that's amazing. So I want to also thank Miriam. Thank you for joining us today and taking your time as well, learning more about Zotero. So again, thank you, Daniel. And we hope to have you again in the future for future workshops with the Assyrian Studies Association and with the graduate students Knowledgebase. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. Good luck.
Okay.